Welcome, everyone. I'm Amanda, the CEO and co-founder of AI for Education. I'm joined today with our Chief Program Officer, Corey Lane Crouch, to talk about something really important, which is the idea of navigating AI ethics in education. And what we're going to look is actually when we say education, it actually goes even further than education. Although we will be focusing on academic integrity, we will also be talking about deep fakes. We'll be talking about climate impact and a little bit about the larger, impact that goes, even further. And so really excited to have you here today. Love seeing Jennifer here, our superintendents we work with and others that we see. So we go to the next slide. We are always like what we love the most about these sessions is a community of practice that we have built together. And so we feel so privileged to be able to do this work with you all, whether you're in K-12 or higher education, you're a teacher, a leader, or even potentially a parent or student. So really appreciate you all being here. And what we want to make sure is that you do one of two things. Number one is if you want to communicate with each other like you're doing right now, please continue to use the chat function. Just make sure you're always replying to everyone because sometimes it only goes to us. And we want to make sure that your colleagues get to see it. But if you have a question for Corey and I, especially when we have close to 300 people here, please drop that into the Q&A. And I'll be watching that the whole way through like we usually do, but just know that. And then if you do have resources or ideas, thoughts, please feel free to always add that into the chat. Dan and our team will also be doing that as well. So you're going to get lots of resources from us. But we're just really excited to have you all here today. And the ultimate goal for us is to actually start talking about the deeper world of AI and ethics in education, if we want to go to the next slide, than just academic integrity. And if you have been with us before or you've seen the work we do online, you know that we like a metaphor, but we also really like to move beyond this rhetoric that AI, ethics is only about academic integrity. And I don't know if you have heard AI is for cheating. I know Corey has. I know I have. You may have
Mhm.
even said it once or twice, but we have this like really strong we're just talking about kids using AI to cheat. And while we do know that there are academic integrity impacts, we want to make sure that when we talk about AI ethics in education, that we really go beyond that rhetoric below that waterline and have conversations that go deeper. So you'll see here we have some positives too, because with every potential impact, negative impact, there's an opportunity on the other side. But what we would suggest is when you think about academic integrity, we would think that we actually believe that cognitive offload, kids actually giving away all their thinking, is probably a bigger issue than just academic integrity. So we're going to talk about that in the first section. We're also going to talk about deep fakes. Deep fakes, I think we've known about for the last couple, like decade or so, but they have gotten sophisticated, like in a way you will be so surprised. You're actually going to have some fun with deep fakes in the sense we're going to try them out together. But also, we're going to talk about things that are not even on here, like climate impact. We will talk a little bit at the end around other issues around like artificial intimacy and bias. But for today, we really want to focus on those three. So we're going to talk about deepfakes, academic integrity, and climate. And so if we go to the next slide, what we're going to see is that for us, this is our AI literacy definition. And I'm sure if you're doing this work, there are lots and lots of definitions, but this is
Mhm.
ours. And this is AI literacy consists of the knowledge, skills, and mindsets that enable individuals. And you'll see that we don't just say students. So when you think about this ethical conversation we're having, it has to go beyond our young people. It needs to go into the entire community. But what we want them to be able to do, if you have these skills, mindsets, and knowledge, is start to know how to use AI in three ways: safely, ethically, and effectively. And the way that we talk about that, it becomes AI literacy you can see. And so if we go to the next slide, what we're going to see is that there are three buckets, and we won't really be focusing on effectively as much today, although there are lots of opportunities to kind of weave that in, but we're going to be focusing on those two first things, safe and ethical. And what you're going to notice is they are different, right? Because ethical could be not creating a deep fake, but then safe could be actually not putting yourself, like not putting your information or imagery out there, or being aware of not to share it, those types of pieces. So what we're going to really want you to think about is like, how do these two, our ability to start to understand the larger impact, but also start to think about our role as those that can share, but also evaluate what we see through generative AI in a way that's both safe and ethical. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shift it to Corey, who I'm so glad to have here. She'll introduce herself first, and then she's going to take us through academic integrity because we know we had to start here, everybody, because we do know that's what a lot of you are thinking about, but we are going to broaden the conversation as we go. So Corey, take it away.
Thanks, Amanda. It's exciting to be back with you all. And for those that I haven't met before, my name is Corey. And a fun fact about my background is I started off my career as a high school English teacher. And I graded a lot of essays and assigned a lot of essays and read a lot of not so good student writing, to be honest, and certainly plenty of good student writing. And so when we have the opportunity to be out in the field talking with educators and leaders like yourselves about this real question of academic integrity, especially with writing, it hits home because I know that the way that I assessed in my classroom was so much through seeing students putting their thinking in writing. But what we have found, well, the studies have found so far about an AI and cheating, as Amanda said, we know that this question of academic integrity is a big one, and I see some of you bringing it up in the chat already right away. Is that the study that the researchers at Stanford did back in 2023, after ChatGPT was released, they found that the rate of students self-reporting cheating didn't increase overall. It was between 60 and 70%, depending upon the school, of students, high school students specifically, self-reporting engaging in cheating behavior, which was not overall different from 2022. But there is some interesting data within the study about how they're cheating differently. Amanda, do you want to say a little bit about some of the specifics that we found in the nuanced data?
Silly. Well, if you know us, you know we love data. And so I'm actually going to drop the updated study that Victor Lee and his team at Stanford have done. One of the most interesting things is that while students were not cheating more, as Corey said, there was a pretty big increase between 2022 and 2023 in how many students were actually using generative AI or AI systems to fully complete an assignment, assessment, and all of those things. Because this is what's really interesting. What you'll notice is what was fascinating is that in private schools, there was no real change. It kind of stuck around 3%. But what you're going to notice is that it doubled in public high schools and then it almost tripled in charter schools. And so what we do see is that while the number of students that are using different methods, whether it's going to Corey, my best friend, or having a parent, or using an online tool, or even a tutor, what we see is that now students are shifting into using generative AI and or AI in general. So that could be ChatGPT, it could be Snapchat AI, everybody. Snapchat AI is can do your homework and 150 million users, many of them young people, but it also is specialized tools that are Quillbot or paraphrasing tools. But I do think this is really important for us to recognize and to talk to students about because this number is most likely going to continue to increase within the subset of students that already show cheating behaviors. And I do think that too, some of the points in the chat is that we are going to talk a lot about redefinition. If you join some of our assessment work, we talk about redefining not just mastery, but what academic integrity is going to be as well. So back to you, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. I see Tracy and Timothy saying, okay, well, what do we mean by cheating anyway? And this data point, as I'll just stamp what Amanda said, these are students self-reporting that they explicitly used an AI tool when they knew they weren't supposed to. So that's as clear as we think it can get about students knowing that they're engaging in a behavior that's not in alignment with their academic and integrity policies. It's not their own thinking. Now, we know in education, we forever are seeking, solutions that are going to help us solve some of these more complex challenges. And there's no silver bullet here. I know that seasoned educators also know there rarely is. And some of the reactive responses we believe are not the full answers, and specifically these two things. a full return to pencil and paper. Now, you can share in the chat if you have, because we know that some educators have decided, okay, this just means students have to have a blank page, a pen, and they're going to write their essay in the 45 minutes that I have them. Or even similarly, maybe they're not handwriting it, but they are opening up a blank document in the class and they are in a lockdown browser and they have to write the essay in 45 minutes. Number one, this approach is actually, as it says, presents some obstacles for students with learning differences, and so may actually be what we call an undesirable difficulty that becomes a barrier to them presenting the real mastery that they have and the real thinking that they're able to do on that topic. Now, that's not to say don't ever do this. We believe it can be a tool in your toolbox, but we don't think it should be the only solution, because not only is it not accessible to all students, but also it's not really aligned to how students are going to have to represent their thinking and use the tools available to them as they move toward more career readiness or readiness for post-secondary. So while it might be a tool in the toolbox, it's not the full answer to solving this idea of cheating with AI. Also, like Amanda often says, if you follow us and you spend any time with us in our work, this is not a new point to you, but we don't believe AI detectors are the right answer either, really, because they don't work. Maybe it's a tool in your toolbox. And when I say this, I'm always thinking of my fellow ELA teachers, though I know we have other contents here as well. And having potentially hundreds of essays or hundreds of student writing that all of a sudden now you don't know if they had unauthorized support or not. But these detectors are inaccurate and they can also be biased against non-native English speakers. Amanda and I can both tell you, I would say almost always when we are working with teachers, if there's more than 10 teachers in the room, somebody will raise their hand and actually share with us. I'm sure some of you could do it in the chat about a time that one of their students or even their own children has been accused of cheating with AI because of the use of an AI detector, and the student didn't cheat. And then students themselves will tell us quite often about how they trick the AI detectors. So we hear firsthand on both sides about the false positives and the false negatives. Amanda, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was going to
Are you
say one
there?
of the interesting things when you talk about bias is it's actually not just and actually right now Megan just said it's not just non-native
Yeah.
English speakers, but it's
Well,
neurodivergent people as well as those that love purple prose, an M dash, a semicolon, a however. So like I tend to be AI generated, everyone, when I do my writing. But I do want to, if we can go to the next slide though, I just want to talk a little bit how
yeah.
we like I think people don't recognize that the way that generative AI works is a random token, it's a random token generator, right? It's a random word generator that leads into these papers. And so if you go to ChatGPT right now and you open up a browser and say, write me an essay like a ninth grader, including common misspellings like there, and there, what you'll see is that if you then take that same paper and you run it through ChatGPT again and say, did you write this? ChatGPT does not know because ChatGPT doesn't have a database, a traditional database, which is how, previous plagiarism detectors have worked. It's like Wikipedia is on the web. You can crawl it and, understand it. And the AI, the plagiarism detectors will update every day or even like all the time. I mean, it's not every day. It happens so quickly. But I do want to see this. So Mandy on our team, it took
Mhm.
her only 5 minutes to take a fully AI generated piece. First of all, what you notice is it's just a paragraph, and it wasn't even sure it was fully AI generated, but she spent about like 2 or 3 minutes just replacing 3 or 4 words, adding a misspelling, and it was immediately 0%. And what we would suggest is if you go to the next slide, if you want to try this with your teachers, or like just an
Oh,
idea, I'll actually go
good.
back. So yeah, we removed it. But if you want to try this out, we did this live in North Carolina. I don't know if anybody from North Carolina is here at NC Ties, where we gave everybody 10 minutes to fool an AI detector. And we would not believe how many of us were able to fool an AI detector in less than 10 minutes and how inconsistent they were. And you know what? It was fascinating to get the teachers, A, to be in the mindset of students, but B, really start to understand how unreliable these tools are because
Mhm.
you think, turn it in, plagiarism detector, it works. And you think it's the same thing for AI, and it's not because the technology underlying it is different and makes it impossible to actually know fully if AI generated, like generative AI generated a text. So back to you, Corey.
Yeah, and I want to stamp plagiarism detectors still work. So for the and as you were saying, because the technology is different, so it's a little bit of a bone in some ways that we can throw to educators that have used plagiarism detectors for some time before ChatGPT. They will still work if a student is pulling text directly from the internet because that's searching and finding a match. And as we know, generative AI does not pull a direct match from anything. So there's no direct match for it to search for. And I see this already in some of the chat as well. Kim, you specifically mentioned that at your institution, it sounds like you have shifted the conversation and reframed it already from calling it an accusation to a conversation around academic integrity. And again, while this isn't the one thing that is going to fully solve this question of how do we handle it cheating with AI, we do encourage you to consider what does it look like to be able to go from reactive to proactive. In our field in general, ChatGPT was launched and it made a lot of sense that we had to be reactive because a student started using it and we didn't get a heads up, if you will, fully in education that students were going to have this access to a magic essay button, a calculator for the humanities. So in the spring of 2023 and really the 2023-24 academic school year, it made sense that as a field we had to be reactive. But being reactive and accusing and being in the space where trust has broken down between teacher and between students, both teachers can't fully trust if work is authentically fully student thinking, and students don't trust that they're not going to be accused. It makes AI feel like this forbidden conversation, forbidden tool, and it's just exhausting and not good for the relationships and the type of collaborative classroom cultures and really human-centered classroom cultures and school cultures that we want to cultivate with our young people. So we encourage you to think of how do you start to shift to these proactive strategies, which some of you are seeing in the chat are doing already, where you're having a conversation about AI as a tool and what does it look like to use it responsibly? When is it appropriate? When is it not appropriate? And how can students, alongside with their teachers, start to build their metacognition, a skill set around really being aware of what they understand and what they don't understand, and how they can use AI tools to enhance that understanding versus fully replace the cognitive work that we need them to do.
If I can just kind of bring some stuff out of the chat, Corey, I
Yeah,
think
please. I was going to say,
I would
what are
say
you
we're
seeing?
going to town. You guys know how much I
I
love
can
our
tell.
chat.
I was like, I can't keep up
You know,
anymore. But
we
keep
love
at
our
it.
chats with our 400 best friends on AI and ethics in education. But I do think the couple of things I want to talk about. No teacher went into teaching to be an AI detector or a cheating
Right.
detector. And it can be super exhausting. So we are going to have to think about different approaches. But I do think, though, that what's really interesting here are there are opportunities to use this as a lever to create better assessments, as Corey has said,
Yes.
and to focus on what matters, which are a lot of the durable skills, the ability to do novel application, to critically evaluate, to respond in meaningful ways that we have always, I think, as educators wanted to do, but the systems of high stakes testing, if you are in the US or Canada or Australia or, like the UK, we have these, a lot of us have these high stakes testing that put a lot of pressure on us in high school for students to be able to like do a lot of like recall and specific type of answering, which are the types of assessments that are falling apart right now. And so I do think that there's really like something is I can give you, let's give you one strategy. Like one of the best strategies is if a student turns something in, instead of going to an AI detector, take time to ask them two questions about their writing. Just two questions. What did you learn from this process, and what was the most important thing that you actually said? And if a student cannot do that, you know what? It might not mean they used AI for cheating, but what it does mean is they did not get the foundational learning. And so someone that could be a kid just like copying things down or not really thinking about it, or it could be something where they offloaded it. So I just think like that very simple way, because then if a kid is like the really good kid and always gets a great essay, but they can't explain what they meant, then that's a way for us to even go deeper with kids that are doing quite well. And so I don't think it has to be these huge changes, but I do think these opportunities of leaning into authentic assessment, of reframing the conversation, of looking at durable skills, I think is really our opportunity here.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know, Amanda. Megan is calling for an assessment revolution in the chat, and it looks like she's getting some momentum. So
Let's do it.
we might have a bigger movement on our hands. But joking aside, we know that assessment design and the learning experience design in schools for students does need a pretty significant evolution. And at individual teacher levels, or even at a school leader level, that feels big. At least it would be for me, and as my high school English teacher self or as my high school principal self. We get that fully building that bridge from our current practice to what does future ready practice look like with these AI tools. That is a long journey. And so as Amanda said, even thinking about, okay, so what is one thing we can do differently starting tomorrow? Just asking students about their thinking and just talking to students. You'll continue to hear us say that, but I believe deeply, because I'm a career educator, our young people want to be successful. They also cheat sometimes. And I know we have to ask ourselves, why are they cheating? But ultimately, they want to be successful. They want to be set up to have agency in what they're doing next. And so engaging them in partners about this conversation is a way to move together toward more authentic assessment and more transparent conversation about their learning, what tools they're using, and when they're making mistakes in the choices that they take. One resource that we have to also help get you started with this is this guidance flowchart to help students build that cognitive muscle of, should I use AI for this assignment or not? Is it appropriate? And this is not the only guidance we suggest having in place. We suggest having clear guidelines for how you want students to navigate the tools they have available to them. But this can get you started, can share it with students, do some scenarios to practice where, in the assignment or in their classwork or in their homework, it might be okay for them to use AI as a tool versus not. And then this helps them gain more clarity and start to be more metacognitive about where they need to engage in productive cognitive struggle themselves and where it might be okay to use AI as a tool.
Yeah, I just want to also, like Michael just said about his adult learners. One thing that we did in
Mm.
we have a train the trainer right now that's GenAI literacy that we're in the second cohort. And one of the things that we did is that if you missed a live session, we want to make sure that someone has a reflection. So what we did to make it AI kind of resistant is we asked them to do a short 1 minute video, which they could, if you know what, if you want to go into HeyGen or an avatar maker, then you spend a lot of time. So we're okay with that. But I do
Yes,
think what just that simple thing of like, pull out your phone. We won't even look at like we just want to hear what you think instead of like how easy it would be to go put the recording into a large language model and get some feedback. I think that those little things are going to be really important. And I think that we're going to have to put so much more focus on the whys of what we do. Like, what is the purpose of what we're doing in terms of assessment? Then also, how can we make sure that kids can be successful or our adult students be successful? So this is by the way, also, if you don't know us, this has been like this is one of our oldest resources because we noticed this over a year ago that if we didn't have a conversation that was about mindsets and actually thinking through the purpose of what we're doing and then creating a space for students to ask permission and to follow steps to keep the work verified so that they know that they're using models in the right way, that we really needed to do that very quickly. And I think that we continue to see this as important.
absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate Rebecca sharing a strategy that she has used in the chat to help students build the skill set. And really what this goes hand in hand with proactively building student AI literacy. Have the guidance in place and then help them experience and understand why there are some of those limitations. Rebecca called out having students experience hallucinations. And it makes me think of a young person at a high school out here in California that I was talking to last year. And she shared with me that it happened to a friend. You know, the students always share. My friend did this thing with AI. But it was an assignment that made sense to me as an English teacher, a character analysis of a portion of a novel that they were reading in class. And the student didn't get the reading done on time. The student also understands, some of how to get by with using AI, and they had AI write a character analysis for the novel and changed some of it, changed some of the wording and the sentence structure, and they like made it in their own voice, but still got caught cheating. Why? Why do you think they got caught cheating?
I'm pretty
Because
sure it had some made up stuff.
the character, it was on a character that wasn't actually in that novel from the
Love
author.
it.
It was a wrong character. So, the student was like, this sounds like a good character analysis, and just assumed
And
that
it
it
was
was right
real.
and didn't verify. So that was like an academic integrity violation, but you better bet that student learned about
The hard way.
hallucinations.
Absolutely. And if Dan, do you mind just putting in the chat? We also have these critical analyses tools that can also be helpful of like comparing AI writing to non-AI writing along those same places. But we're going to shift
Yeah,
focus.
let's shift. We're having
This
too much
it,
fun with
this is
academic
my deep fake for
integrity.
today. Apparently, I'm on the Ion throne, and I look very upset, everyone. But what we want to talk about, we're going to shift from academic integrity into some of the two other pieces. The first is deep fakes, and what I'm going to do is Dan's going to drop this, or even Corey is going to drop this URL. If you want to create your own deep fake, we do like that this is actually quite responsible in the sense of as long as you don't share the deep fake that was created, it immediately deletes your original photo and this photo. So we do love that data privacy is important, but deep fakes have really changed. As I do not sit upon the Iron Throne, But what we want to talk about, and I know our heads are still in academic integrity, but there are these bigger pictures, and we always want you to like, we always want to pull back, right? We always want to pull back to what else is happening as well. And so what we have, we go to the next slide. What we see is that deepfakes have really gotten significantly more sophisticated. So what we're going to do together is I'm actually going to create a poll. And what we're going to do is we're going to play a couple of these together where you just have to pick A or B, what you think is real or not. So Corey's going to do this. I'm going to actually do this. And then we're going to try it with a group of our 400 favorite friends. And you're going
I'm
to try it
open.
out. Okay. Is everybody cool? We're going to try this out. Yeah. I hope I'm not a Targaryen. I don't know enough about the the lore, but it was quite funny. It was either that or being on a unicorn, so we picked that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna launch this poll, and then Corey, don't answer yet, but Corey's gonna start this. Leanne, you're funny. Okay, so which of these two do we think is real? So we already have some answers coming in. There are a lot of us. I think yeah, let's give it like, there we go. Okay, so what I love about this is even though you can't see this, it is almost completely half and half. So give everyone one more minute, like 10 more seconds. Yeah, so one of them is AI generated and one of them is not. So which one do you think is AI generated? Uh, so there we go. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna close it now. If you couldn't answer, get the next one. I'm gonna share with you guys. And what is hysterical is that it is pretty. Can you see it, Corey? So very
Okay.
minimally, B was fake. What do we think? And we were incorrect. So the 45% of us that believed it. Let's do one more. I'm gonna launch the poll again. So hold on one second. We're gonna go back. We're gonna launch it again. I know how to do this. Relaunch poll. Okay, so which one of these two do we believe is AI generated, A or B? Okay, you guys are answering a lot faster now. And what's even funnier is it's even closer
Even closer.
time. So let's just give everybody a second more to do this. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll. Here we go. A and B almost like, there we go. So which one do we think it is?
I
The
can't
first,
see the result. You have to tell me which
oh,
one
sorry,
it
share
is.
results. Sorry, Corey. Okay, so by a hair, B is fake.
All right. We
Okay,
were wrong
everyone.
both times.
We have lost. Like,
All right.
and
Well,
so this is kind of fun. There's another one that we could put in the chat, by the way. Like it's called Odd One Out, which is, which is kind of funny. You know what? We have time. Let's do one more. So Corey, can you go to Odd One Out? Because this is
oh,
when people think of deepfakes and they only think of like people. But then what we see is that actually it can be anything. So Odd One Out is over a year old, which is
odd one out game.
yeah, so it's a Google game that was created to test our ability to identify AI generated. So it's going to have four choices. So give me one. I'm going to create a poll really quickly. So you're going to have to pick which is AI. But you're going to have to pick out of four, and it goes really fast. So Corey, we're going to have to like,
It says race against time. I'm ready.
actually, you know what? We're just going to do it. Like Corey, you and I are going to do it. People put it in because it's going to go too fast. But
Okay.
let's start it. It's thinking.
Hurry up and wait moment.
But I promise you, if you do this with students or with teachers, they just absolutely love how easy, how easily fooled we are. Although I think maybe, is it not working, Corey? It's being very
Perhaps not.
slow. So maybe just
Well,
refresh it.
it's also good for us all to think about, was there a reason why you were guessing A or B, or was it just a total flip of the
Was it
coin?
just a guess? Because we kind of put you guys on the spot.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay,
Okay,
here we
here we
go,
go.
Corey. Let's see how good we are for the team. So the tangerine, which one do you think it is, Corey?
Oh, the generated. I think it's this
Yeah.
because there's a weird line right here.
Yeah,
You?
I think it's that one too. Yeah, awesome. Look, hey, we're good at this. Okay, next one.
Rickshaw. I think it's this.
Okay, I think it's one.
You think it's one? All right, we'll go with
Yeah.
one.
No, are you right? Were you right? Oh, Corey got it. So the reason why these are fun, we'll do one more. I'm clearly not good at this. Towel. I think it's
I
one.
think I think it's one too because that has a weird line there.
Yeah. And so here, but these are kind of fun. When we've
Yeah.
done this in person, what we found is that it kind of gets you thinking a little bit differently. So we're going to do one last example of deepfakes because this is where I think we're going to have to move out of our own way here and start to really understand what's happening. So there is Sesame AI, which is a voice AI. And if you've been with us over the last week and a half, you know we've done this before. So Corey's going to have a bit of a conversation. Let's pick Miles. And let's talk to Miles.
Oh, you're back. It's been way too long. 8 days feels like a whole lifetime nowadays, you know?
Miles, I'm busy though.
No worries. I get it. Gotta make time for the important stuff, right?
Yeah,
Besides, keeps things.
absolutely. I've been busy working with teachers and leaders talking about AI literacy and AI in education.
That's amazing. AI literacy and education. Talk about
Yeah.
a vital mission.
What
We're
what
vital in
what
the co-
what do you think about it? What do you think about AI in education?
I think it's wild, honestly. Like, imagine a future where every student has a personalized AI tutor who can adapt to their learning style and pace, or where classrooms are interactive, responsive environments that change based on what students are learning. The possibilities are kind of mind blowing, right?
Sure, but there are also some pretty massive ethical considerations as well.
Totally. You can't just throw AI at a problem and expect it to magically fix things. Bias in algorithms, data privacy, the potential for misuse, those are all huge concerns that we got to grapple with head on. It's a delicate balance, for sure.
Miles, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. I'm sure
So
about
I
the.
have a question. What about like how you as a voice AI that sounds very human, what could be the ethical considerations of that?
That's a great question and a super important one. People might start relying too heavily on us, forgetting that we're not human. It's easy to get comfortable with a really convincing voice, you know? Honestly, I think it all comes down to transparency. We need to be
Well,
upfront.
we had a conversation with Maya a couple weeks ago where she said that she was human.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. See, that's exactly what I mean. Even if it was said in jest, it highlights the tricky territory we're in. As AI gets more sophisticated, these lines are going to get blurrier and blurrier. It's a good thing you're thinking about this stuff. It's important to keep the conversation going and push for responsible development.
Awesome. We'll end there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Miles.
First of all, I just want to point out data privacy. They're tracking her web browser because she's done this in different places to know that she was on 8 days ago. So let's talk about that. But here we go. The reason why we want to show you the fun to something like this is not to scare us, but to really start to have us establish just how much things are changing. So this voice AI is so interesting because it's been created to pass the uncanny valley, which means like if you use like voice mode on like ChatGPT, it'll interrupt you. It'll feel a little bit weird. If you listen to the AI overviews on Gemini, or that's now on Gemini, but also on Notebook LM, they feel very uncomfortable. And so what's happened is this has been designed to make you feel like it is human. And I think that this is where we have to be aware that it has the ability to understand natural stops in conversation, respond. It's built on a foundation model that's quite good. And then also, I think this is where it starts to get really, really like fascinating because what if we think about if we move to the next slide, think about what this means for our young people, but also for us. And I think that this is where things like identity theft, like if that calls you up and says, "Hey, Corey's called up by Amanda," and Amanda says, "I need you to transfer like money or figure out my password." But like I'm an adult, like I might figure it out. But what about young people that are getting phone calls? I actually think it like potentially a kid doesn't want to go to school and they get Miles to call as their parent like could be interesting as well. There are things that we've seen already happen around blackmail. Cyberbullying absolutely is something that's happening. We also know that propaganda and fake news has already been an issue, as well as election manipulation. So we do have lots of these issues. And I think that this is where we have got to get to a place where we really start to have people understand the capabilities and start to protect themselves and start to think first, is it real? Not is it like so like instead of us thinking it is real and then maybe it could be fake, we have to kind of start shifting our thinking into actually thinking, hey, this is this even real? And then having the ability to establish sources or provenance is going to be so important in general. But then I also just want to kind of also point in the sense of non-consensual intimate images is that we already know, everyone, and this is real, that this is happening not just in schools, but around the world, where we have nudification apps that are taking images of mostly young women and women and creating a realistic nude. And we have seen, this is when Corey said that we saw, if you people raising their hands that a kid has been accused of academic integrity breaches, we also ask if there has been a deepfake issue in your school or community, and every single time we're in a mixed group, now someone raises their hand. So this is so much more common. And in one case, we were at a district where only 2 or 3 people within the district knew it happened. So when she raised a hand, it was a surprise to everybody. And I think that this is where that need for AI literacy is really important. If we go to the next slide, what we're going to see is that some of the strategies it's really important is that verify before you share role. And I mean that just in general. I feel like there was like the Pope in a puffy coat. There was the Drake and Weekend song. All of those ended up being AI generated. The Taylor Swift issue where the fake nude that was on Twitter literally had 43 million views in 13 hours. 13 hours. And I think that that is where it gets really, really scary because what we see here is that we really have to be aware of that verify before we share because it can have a major impact. The second is we want to be able to show age-appropriate examples of real versus altered media, the same way we did it with you all. It can be fun, but I tell you, as soon as kids realize and adults realize you cannot tell, it starts to give you a healthy understanding and a skepticism of what you see online. We have a classroom discussion guide, which Dan will put in the channel and also will share in the resources around deepfakes to actually have kids or even teachers or staff talking to each other about what this means. And then also we believe very strongly that if you do not have an anonymous reporting mechanism for suspected deepfakes, we would really highly suggest it. And the reason why we would suggest it being anonymous is that a lot of kids that are getting impacted, the young women that are impacted, they don't know how to feel about it because it's not real. And so this idea of not wanting to go out on a limb and say, but it was just a joke or whatever, what we want it to do is give us people that it starts to be transparent and you can say that very quickly. And then finally, I think what's really important is that we want to start getting into at least a little habit of maybe spotting unusual elements, but the same way that we just said A or B, start to actually have it be a little bit less a little bit less immediate, but more of that verification. Yes, absolutely. And we're not using AI to verify AI because that's not helpful either.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's touch on one more ethical component before we wrap up here. And that is the environmental impact of developing and really running and hosting the data centers and the hardware and infrastructure for these tools. There are costs that we're seeing be reported, and we also know, though, that there are potential benefits for the environmental impact. And if you dig into this conversation more online and the articles, you'll see that there is a way to weigh both. But oftentimes we find that the educators that we're working with, our audiences, not everybody realizes the environmental costs, both the energy consumption and the water consumption that these massive data centers require in order to run the generative AI models that we're using every day. And it's also triggered this resurgence of nuclear power, all things that have an impact on the ongoing climate and environmental impact that we know that we are navigating in present day. But then on the flip side of that, we also know that these models could potentially help us solve for some of the challenges with energy and water consumption and the warming of the environment because of those things. They can be predicted, help us with better prediction of what to expect and optimize their resources. And there are we have this article actually specifically from Microsoft, where they're really trying to research how to decrease these numbers of the amount of power that is being used and the amount of water that is being used. Already, the data centers that are powering the generative AI we use account for 1 to 1.5% of total global electricity use. And some of these are slight estimates and predictions based on the data points that those that are studying this can pull. And then also what we know is a 16-ounce bottle of water. So just think of that 16 ounce. Every time that we are prompting in ChatGPT or Claude or even in our EdTech layers, we're essentially pouring a 16-ounce bottle of water onto that data center to help keep them cool so that they can continue to operate. So this is an idea of even just what is the usage that's happening right now every time we are prompting and using the tools. And like I said, there are people that are trying to solve for this with generative AI, but solve for the broader environmental impact of other technologies as
I just
well.
want to say, everyone, though, there's a little bit of like, oh my God, I'm never using this. And I just want to be clear is
Oh,
that this is first of all, this is the water
cost
warming has an
strategies.
environmental impact, but it also is something that is going to have like, I think the best way to think about this is that the actual cost of the tool is going to be how much like climate impact it's going to have. So for example, when ChatGPT was
Mm-hmm.
first released, like there was an enormous amount of impact, even like creating 10 images, but that has really changed. But what hasn't changed is if you are using, so if you just use, ChatGPT for prompts or you just use, create a couple images, I think you can feel very confident that you're not having a massive environmental impact. But what is having an environmental impact is if you are using deep research to write a research paper and it's taking 8 minutes, or you're creating a ton of notebook LMs which take 8 minutes, or using a reasoning model that takes like 1 minute to 2 minutes, that amount of like actual computing will have a larger environmental cost. And so what we have to be, it's one of the reasons why we don't really do reasoning models yet, is because they are more expensive, so to speak. And also we don't see perfectly how it's going to support educators and students as much. But I think that like it really does something that we want to be aware of is that like we just have to know that if I'm doing images and I just get into a jag or I'm just hitting the go, 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 then I am having an impact. But also, we don't think about that when we use any technology. We're not thinking about it every time we search Google search or every time we use a web app like that's got a cloud server. Why, so I think it's just really important. But also the last thing I'll say that's really important is that the majority of the climate impact is at the level of the technology company. The technology
Mm-hmm.
companies are in a race to build better AI or generative AI, which means that they are putting an entire amount of money and climate and energy use towards building these better models that have almost nothing to do with you guys, the individual, but everything about the race towards super intelligence. And so we have to kind of think about this in a nuanced way because we need to like be able to have these. It's kind of interesting. It's a subtle conversation and it's one that's shifting and changing. And so I do think that we just don't want to do, one prompt is going to be the end of the world, but also
Right.
understand that if we're just not thinking about it all, it will have an impact.
And part of the reason for talking about this when we think about our young people is just being aware and having the conversation so that they can be more conscious consumers of technology and of what they're using in general. And yes, so that they can make it some intentional decisions, the same as us as educators. But I also think about the fact that our young people are going to be the ones that are building this technology, that are helping to shape the way the technology evolves over in the future. And so it's something that happens to us, but it's also something that they can influence and lead on. And the first step of empowering them to do that is to be aware and conscious and to develop their own thought process about how do we responsibly, with all of these ethical considerations, move toward the future in a way that helps us reap the positive benefits of the technology and mitigate the risks and the harms.
So we're just gonna wrap up with, we know we didn't cover everything, everybody,
Yeah,
but
there's so much.
I think everyone enjoyed this, right? So what we'll do, I hope so. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. But what we'll probably do is a second version of this where we actually talk about copyright, we'll talk about misinformation, privacy concerns, some of the human labor pieces as well as AI companionship, and equity of
Yes.
access. So we'll do that together. But we just want to say that while we didn't have a chance to this, there is like the ethical component of AI literacy is going to be so important. So we just really appreciate y'all being here. And what we're going to do is just go to one more slide, and this will be shared tomorrow if you have to leave. But like the idea of the takeaways here is that, first of all, ethical AI use is not going to be a destination. It's a journey. We're going to have to be learning all the time. Like lifelong learning, everybody, is going to be more important than ever because things are going to move more quickly than ever before. So there are not going to be any quick and easy answers, but we do think that it's just about committing to like creating spaces for AI literacy, for responsible use, for discussions that are possible, because that's going to be really important. We just believe that AI literacy has to be the foundation. And the last thing is we just want to always think about the concerns with opportunities. If we only say the negative, then there's the knowledge that like we might be pulling some people back or like actually keeping some people back from understanding what the opportunities are as well. And hopefully over time we will see more responsible
Yes.
creation of the tools and have easier conversations about this, but not quite right now. And the last thing is, if you haven't done this and you're an educator, going to the next slide, is like if you're not talking to students, oh, actually, we don't have any more, but if you're not talking to students, then you're
Yeah.
not doing the right thing. So
Yes.
please always talk to kiddos about this. And that means if you have kids yourselves or you're
Yeah.
teaching. But the last thing is there are lots of really great resources. We've got Tech Betters, and we'll include this in tomorrow's repost, the Global AI Ethics and Governance Observatory. And then our newsletter, we include a lot of ethics every time. So we just really appreciate everyone joining. And as always, we have a lot of resources on our slide. And like, I think that what we just really want to kind of leave on is that this is the opportunity for us as a really informed and committed group of people focus on a ethical adoption of AI in schools and education to do this together. So, this is what we can do. Like we've given you some thing to think about, but you guys shared some great resources. I mean, Corey and I, we care a lot as well as our whole AI for Education team about the work that you're doing. So just really appreciate everyone. We hope you have a beautiful morning, evening, or night, and we will see you. We have an AI literacy webinar next week for AI Literacy Day. So if you could join that, that would be great. And then we'll be talking about assessment scales with Leon Furs just a week after. So hopefully we see you soon. And thanks everybody
See
for
you
joining.
soon.
Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, everyone.